What if I told you that humanity's greatest space achievements weren't just about science, but about politics, power, and national pride? From the Cold War space race to modern billionaires launching rockets, the story of space has always been tangled with the story of politics. In 1957, the Soviet Union shocked the world with Sputnik, the first satellite ever launched into orbit. For ordinary people, it was a scientific wonder. But for politicians, it was a national security crisis. If the Soviets could put a satellite in space, what else could they launch from there? The United States scrambled to respond. Within a year, NASA was founded. But here's the catch: it wasn't just about science. President Eisenhower and later President Kennedy pushed space exploration as a way to prove democracy could outpace communism. And that's how space became the ultimate political playing field. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy delivered one of the most famous speeches in history. He promised that America would land a man on the moon before the decade was out. This wasn't just about curiosity, it was about sending a message. America would lead the world. Billions of dollars flowed into NASA. Entire cities were built around the Apollo program. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and workers were mobilized. Not because politicians cared deeply about space science, but because the moon landing became a symbol of victory in the Cold War. And when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface in 1969, it wasn't just a win for science, it was a win for American politics. After Apollo, politics continued to shape space exploration. In the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan proposed Star Wars, a missile defense system using space-based weapons. It was less about real science and more about political strategy to pressure the Soviet Union. Even international collaborations like the International Space Station were political. What better way to turn former enemies into partners than to force them to live and work together in orbit? Space became not just a laboratory but a stage for diplomacy, competition, and sometimes even intimidation. Here's the tricky part. Space exploration is expensive, and politicians control the money. Throughout NASA's history, programs have been canceled, revived, or delayed depending on who was in office. The space shuttle was meant to lower costs but became a political football. Plans to return to the moon in the 1990s were shelved when budgets tightened. Even today, projects like Artemis depend entirely on political will and funding. In short, scientists dream, engineers build, but politicians sign the checks. But the collision of politics and space didn't stop with governments. In the 21st century, billionaires like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson launched private space companies. At first, they claimed independence from politics, but in reality, they're deeply tied to it. SpaceX thrives on NASA contracts. Blue Origin lobbies politicians for funding. Even the race to colonize Mars or mine asteroids is shaped by government regulations and international treaties. So while it looks like billionaires are leading the way, politics is still the silent partner in every launch. Today, countries like China, India, and the United Arab Emirates are investing heavily in space. Why? Because space programs signal technological power, inspire national pride, and project influence on the world stage. When China lands a rover on the far side of the moon, it's not just about discovery, it's about prestige. When India sends a probe to Mars on a tiny budget, it tells the world, we belong at the top table of nations. Politics drives the timeline as much as science does. So what's next? As humanity pushes toward Mars, asteroids, and even lunar colonies, political questions will only get bigger. Who owns the resources in space? Will countries fight over mining rights on the moon? What laws will govern settlements on Mars? We're not just sending rockets into space, we're exporting politics into the cosmos. From Sputnik to SpaceX, from Kennedy to China's lunar ambitions, the history of space is inseparable from the history of politics. Every satellite, every rover, every astronaut tells a story not just of exploration but of power, rivalry, and human ambition. So next time you see a rocket launch, remember, behind the science, there's always a political agenda pushing it forward. Space may be infinite, but our politics are following us out there. The question is, will they push us toward the stars, or hold us back?